Cue country roads and hail West Virginia, everybody, as the Mountaineers come away with a victory over the Colorado Buffaloes at Milan Puskar Stadium, 29-22, increasing West Virginia's overall record to 4-6. In conference play now 2-5. Colorado, meanwhile, drops to bowl ineligibility at 3-7, 1-6 in conference play, and head into their bye week. Definitely a satisfying win is the way that I'll call it. Good teams win, as the old adage goes, but great teams cover. West Virginia coming through on that 6.5-point spot. Felt even nicer to do it in front of the legendary 2005 Sugar Bowl team, honoring legendary West Virginia running back Steve Slayton, who, after hearing it 10,000 times over the course of the weekend and seeing it on social media, I remember now, he was announced back over the summer. I even made a video about this for my channel, announced as part of the Hall of Fame class for all of college football, so not just for West Virginia University, but all of college football. Just goes to show how amazing that he was for his 3 seasons in Morgantown, 05 through 07. This was the first, going back to Saturday's game, this was the first time West Virginia has recorded back-to-back wins since October 26th and November 9th of last year, when the Mountaineers beat Arizona and then Cincinnati in back-to-back games on the road. So can't believe that's like where we've come full circle for the last calendar year. But finally, West Virginia on a bit of a hot streak, if you want to call it that, now kind of digging itself out of and maybe to the top of the bottom tier in the Big 12 standings. So now having jumped ahead of UCF, so love that. And, same down with Oklahoma State, who I think has only won one game all so far this season. So this was a game that I want to say was a game of signature moments, and this is the kinds of game that you as a fan, really enjoy, because it keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. I mean, fans couldn't really leave the game early. Weren't really afforded that kind of luxury to try and beat traffic out of Morgantown. If you wanted to stay all 4 quarters and see the win, it came down to the stroke of the end of the 4th quarter. And there were so many on all 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, and special teams, that played a role in this kind of a victory. So you love that in terms of everybody chipping in as part of a victory. And it seems like that's what it takes when you have comparable talent between a West Virginia team and a Colorado team that is severely injured at this point in time in November. So I would say the first play that really just ignited West Virginia on this game, what felt like 2 boxers kind of feeling each other out in the first quarter, was Jacob Boyce's punt block for a safety in the first quarter that just ignited it. I was really happy for the West Virginia special teams crew that's just been kind of silent for majority of this season. Preston Fox not really having the kinds of opportunities that he can in the return game to make the kind of impact that he made last season and previous seasons. So, hey, send the dogs, send the blitz. Must have saw something on film that they could have taken advantage of. Boyce hits the punter's leg, blocks or hits the ball off the punter's leg. And Justin Smith-Brown was just absolutely so close to coming up with that in the end zone, but instead just having to kind of knock it out at the very end. Instead of being able to get 2 hands out of it, at least you get 2 points and then the ball out of it. And then following it up with what might have been the nicest drive of, or at least very impactful, because it put West Virginia up for 2 scores, which they were able to control for most of this game. The 12-play, 75-yard drive right off that last defensive possession, capped off by newly converted Bandit outside linebacker Curtis Jones Jr., now running back, on 4th down. What a play. Heck of an effort there by Curtis Jones Jr. Hit it back at like the 5, and then was taking contact by multiple defenders at the 3, carried multiple guys for 9 feet, and just was able to break the plane before his knee hit the ground, kind of simultaneously right where the ball was located. I know that play was reviewed, but that was, to me, a touchdown. That wasn't one that you're going to go back on the call on the field. So West Virginia needed that. So, instead of turning the ball over back to the Buffaloes on the inch yard line, only up 2-0. So that put West Virginia up 9 at that point in time. West Virginia defense stood on its head, starting from the get-go. Had some troubles in pass coverage, which we'll talk about for this video, but in the first quarter were absolutely outstanding against Juju Lewis as he was trying to get his footing into this game. West Virginia held Colorado to just 9 offensive yards in the first quarter. That's awesome. Now, Juju Lewis kind of turned it on in the second quarter, but for the first quarter, that was awesome. It kind of seemed as if Colorado tried to get things going, as I talked about in the preview show, that Colorado they refuse to run because they can't run, or just they want to run more with the quarterback and pass the ball. Seems like there's kind of I don't know if you say infighting, but a changing of the guard. Pat Shurmur losing play calling responsibility. So I don't know how you'd be an offensive coordinator and not call plays. So instead, going to tight ends coach Brett Bartolone for Juju Lewis on this day. So I think they wanted to try and establish a bit of a ground game. And if you take out the negative yardage lost because of sacks by Juju Lewis, Colorado still only got 26 carries for 90 yards, so not even making the kind of impact that Houston made last week in West Virginia's game there on the road. But I really think it was because of Colorado's offensive line. Not only could they not run the ball, but they really couldn't protect on this day. I know Jordan Seaton, their 5-star left tackle, didn't play. I think they were missing another. Let me see who else was missing. Larry Johnson, the third, I think, was also missing as part of this game. So down 2 offensive starters on that offensive line. For Colorado, gave up 7 sacks on this day. I want to give my credit to West Virginia's defenders. I mean, they were merciless. Ben Bogle, Reed Carrico, both with 2 each. Ben Cutter, Marshawn Oxley, Devin Grant pulling Juju Lewis down by his hair. I mean, they took no prisoners. They were taking pelts, skins, you name it, off the Buffaloes, and they were just going to, this is why I said the hunted becomes the hunter. That if other teams are going to try and take advantage of West Virginia's offensive line this season, do it right back to them. And this was a Colorado offense that really just could not block West Virginia up front on this day. 15 tackles for loss. That's awesome. Just making up for the lost ground that they made. They kind of dug themselves into the hole, I feel like, from Kansas, Utah, BYU, and UCF. So West Virginia getting back to that kind of attacking style defense. And I really just think this has to do with some guys stepping up on the defensive line and also in the linebacking core. I think they finally got really good rotations. I think Zach Alley can kind of play with different guys at different positions, keep them fresh, and they're just motivated right now. So I really like what I think they were really the stars of the defense was the front 7 on this day. They won this game for West Virginia for how they just came after Juju Lewis on this day. Another big play I felt like for West Virginia, beautiful pass on a wheel route play, went for 69 yards. Dior Hubbard, running back, just caught the ball in stride. Really good play call. I thought the play calling, especially in the first half, was kind of up and down, through trying to get things going. Every single time, like I wrote in my notes here, like, what the heck is Rodriguez calling an end-around reverse that drops Jared Bowie back for 12 yards, or Landon Livingston snaps a ball a bit high to Scotty Fox and he's not able to, field the snap cleanly. It felt like very choppy, that West Virginia would get something going only to be sputtered back because of a loss of yardage. That kind of just, West Virginia was kind of stuck between reverse and starting it up. But the 12-play drive, then hitting Dior Hubbard in stride for that big pickup, and then on the next play, loved the play action pass around, coming to a wide open Ryan Ward, put West Virginia up 16-3. Those I felt like were the 2 best drives that West Virginia had on this day. And then, of course, really stupid face mask penalty on number 92 defensive lineman for Colorado. He ends up getting a sack. It was either a sack or a tackle for loss. Either way, yeah, I think it was a sack on Scotty Fox that West Virginia really could ill afford because of the clock situation, but gave West Virginia extra life Cade Hensley was able to set up for a 41-yard field goal, put West Virginia up 10 going into the half. So I think Cade Hensley is finally catching fire, getting some confidence. Wasn't getting the same kinds of I thought it was really weird the way that Coach Deion Sanders was grabbing Alejandro Mata. I know that he'd been with him since his first year being in the program, and actually, I kind of appreciate that. If it wasn't for all of the bravado and all of the arrogance off the field, and it seems like he's kind of tempered that back this year because Shador and Travis Hunter aren't there anymore, so not trying to push them for a Heisman campaign and challenging in the Big 12. That actually humble Deion Sanders, and I've also loved the way that he talked about Noel Devine from this game, really celebrating him as a second son, or how many sons does he have? But another son, really crediting Noel Devine for being a father. Seems like they maybe buried the hatchet from his teenage years, or they have a better relationship. So just all of those kinds of things makes me really like Deion Sanders, and would be a kind of a guy that I would really want to play for, because it clearly he's one of those kinds of players, coaches that you just absolutely love for. But man, he can just be arrogant sometimes that just really turns you off. So it's the best and the worst with Deion. But, so West Virginia went into the half 19-9. Well, I think they were pleased with the way they played defense in the first quarter. Weren't so much in the second quarter. And I was really, really thankful that Dior Hubbard was able to come back into the game after it looked like he suffered kind of a hyperextended knee on the very first series. Sincere Bowers did kind of bounce back in this day. 9 carries, I think, for 36 yards on the day. Let me get that officially. 33. That's who West Virginia needed to call upon whenever Dior Hubbard was hurt. But man, if West Virginia if you didn't have Bowers' fumble that he had, man, that was right coming after. West Virginia could have went up 3 scores, it felt like, in the first half. Maybe it isn't so close because you could have focused a little bit more on the pass defense. I don't know. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. But it's just I want to believe in Sincere Bowers. I really do. I just do think that Dior Hubbard is the more complete back, and I think more sure-handed because of the fumbling issue. That's now 2. That's 2 on the season now by Sincere Bowers. So I just think it's kind of we're scoping out the depth chart for the next season. Kind of keeping that in the back of our minds as we complete this regular season. I just don't know yet on Sincere Bowers. I like his speed. I like what he kind of offers whenever he's able to get to the outside, but just not as sure-handed as Dior Hubbard. So keeping Hubbard healthy, I wonder if we see him on Wednesday's availability report, because I just think after taking 29 carries 2 weeks ago, now taking another, what did he have from this game? Well, he had 16 carries for 64 yards, 6 catches for 94 yards. I would say he was West Virginia's offensive player of the game from this day. Just trying to keep him healthy as best as possible. Maybe you get Clay Ash back, maybe you get Tyler Jacklich, but neither of those 2 backs are what Dior Hubbard is. And I really do think as you get Curtis Jones more comfortable in practice this week, continue to use him in those short yardage situations and give him the football. Maybe I put a pin in this because I still want to talk about this game. And some of the bigger moments. Let me kind of come back to that. So I thought the Derek Carter forced fumble was another one of those kind of signature moments that added to the game for West Virginia, that you needed it. But then a setback on the next offensive series for West Virginia. Tackle for loss on Jeff Weimer. This is, again, one of those kinds of days, when Colorado got Tyreek Byard in the setback in the second half after missing the first half because of a targeting call from Colorado's previous game. Just seemed like Colorado kind of schemed West Virginia well. Especially their defense against West Virginia's offense. Again, for how many tackles for loss they had in these days, or just for no gain. It really seemed like Colorado's defensive line, which I really criticized because of their injuries and not having the kind of sack numbers that they had as compared to last year. But it seemed like they really did play decent. Arden Walker, hearing his name, of course, Tawfiq Byard getting called. Just seemed like they played better defense in the second half. The Scotty Fox second interception. The first one, I was like, okay, his arm, he was trying to make a play. It was one of those kinds of plays that, like, all right, fourth down, if it was an interception, kind of would equate to the same kind of yardage. So he was thrown across his body, saw a wide receiver way downfield, and Byard just kind of jumped in front of the trajectory of where the pass was and came away with easy completion. But the second one, I just didn't understand the play call. Of course, his arm gets hit on it, so he kind of threw a wounded duck out there. Just really gave Colorado life. I thought how West Virginia's defense, though it was getting passed on by this point in time, and we got to talk about that in just a second. I just thought it was just a bit of an unnecessary play, kind of one of those, freshman mistakes. I think we got to kind of keep that in the back of our minds with Scotty Fox and myself included, as well as I think about next week's game against Arizona State and the week following against Texas Tech. Is just like, there will be good, there will be bad, but every single play is additional experience for Scotty Fox that is incredibly valuable at this point in time, because I think he's now securing his spot that he will be West Virginia's quarterback of the future to build around for 2026 and beyond. I just think so. I just think he's getting these valuable reps out there. Looks more polished and more mature every single time he's out there for West Virginia. I think it's just vital that WVU keeps him healthy. Coach Rodriguez, with his play calling, keeping Scotty as healthy as humanly possible on this day. 17 carries for 58 yards rushing, 17 for 28 on the day, 202 yards passing. That did have a passing touchdown, the one to Ward, but 2 picks. 45 QBR, so just below average. I thought Julian Lewis for Colorado had a little bit better of a QBR than a 55-yard QBR for the day, the way he threw the ball. But just kind of that's the way the cookie crumbles with the ratings. I'm sure he's getting nicked because of the sack yardage that he took on this game. But yeah, so Colorado made West Virginia pay. It seemed like for the third consecutive week now, an opposing wide receiver has gone off against West Virginia. First, it was Eric McAllister at TCU. Last week, it was Amari Thomas of Houston. And now this week, it was Omarion Miller. Draylon Miller Omarion Miller. There's 2 Millers on Colorado. 6 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown, along a 43 on this day. Joseph Williams was pretty good. Second in charge for the Buffaloes receiving. 3 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. I think it comes down to really 3 things on this day. One, that is kind of and we saw this, I feel like, in 2018 when Tony Gibson was the defensive coordinator for West Virginia, going against Sam Ehlinger in Texas on the road. When you get to the quarterback, that's when good things happen. But whenever he's able to have enough solid protection, and Colorado, again, was like 50-50 on their protection for this day, and Lewis was able to set his feet, boy has a cannon, boy is accurate, he is dangerous. I am, again, as I said going in the preview video, Colorado's pretty indifferent to me. So is so many of these schools in the Big 12 that I don't care necessarily about. The old Big East schools that I and currently in the ACC that I really hate. But watching him just as a pure football fan of the sport, kid is awesome. I do. I still think he's small. He's small. He needs to put on weight. He's a twig. He needs to, this offseason. And he's young. He just turned 18 2 months ago. So college freshman at just turning 18, I think once he gets into Colorado's offseason conditioning program, eats a ton. If he could go into next season playing at 205 from where he is 190, I think that's a great start for him, and that's only going to help with some of these plays in which he's trying to avoid would-be tacklers coming after him, that he's able to kind of break away from tacklers in a similar kind of fashion I feel like Will Howard did last year for Kansas, 2 years ago for Kansas State in his career. I think he's got a much better arm than Will Howard. I don't know if I'd have to like kind of sit and think about that one. Who would I compare him to so far? Because he's not the kind of runner, and not the scheme that Colorado runs, at least on this day, isn't the same kinds of like the Lincoln Riley, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray kind of offenses. Wasn't necessarily a kind of spread like a traditional RPO or like the kind of offense that West Virginia runs. But man, he just dropped back, tried to find open receivers, and man, he has a cannon. He puts it where the ball needs to be. 299 yards on this day. I don't know if I'd have to look at the future scheduling. I didn't look that up prior to starting this video, when West Virginia goes back to Boulder. But I would assume that we are going to continue to see in West Virginia's matchups against Colorado, if he stays, obviously. I mean, if Mike Norvell gets fired at Florida State and they want to bring Dion over from Colorado to Florida State, because like that's the other thing with Colorado is there will always be a ceiling, I feel like, on as good of a collective talent that Colorado has. I mean, I think like in addition to all of the TV exposure, the enrollment increase, just putting really Colorado on the map, you don't have the kind of in-state talent recruiting. And I do truly think that this year, Colorado has spent so heavily in NIL transfer portal and then recruiting. Same with getting Juju Lewis out of the high school ranks. I just wonder if they've spent so heavily, and now it's like, are we going to be able to keep this up year in and year out? I just wonder if he's really going to commit to high school recruiting. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent about Colorado from this game, but that's what I just mean to say is if he stays there and is able to kind of build around Juju Lewis, I think Colorado would have the same kind of prospects on like an upswing as a program as West Virginia. I think maybe West Virginia is a bit ahead because I just think head-to-head in this day, prime example of it. I just think Coach Rodriguez, with the kind of, I mean, you just got to think, how many years now of coaching experience does Deion Sanders have, especially at the Division I Power 4 level? He has 4 years of experience. If we want to call the Big East back in the day, what was it, Power 5 or Power 6, if there were six power conferences back then like how many years of experience does Coach Rodriguez have? So he has more experience, further along in his development than Coach Sanders does. So he knows how to win a ball game. But I just really like the talent that Juju Lewis has. I thought, like, this is where, going back to the point about Fox, where he's not your average freshman, really a gamer. 4th and 4 at the Colorado 31. You need to get this. He picks up a first down on a quarterback run. Needed that. Got the holding call on Tion Parks on 3rd and 5 to continue the drive. Cade Hensley kicks a field goal to go up 22-16. This was late in the third quarter. 42-yard completion to Joseph Williams for Colorado, back the opposite way. Great low throw by Julian Lewis on this day led to a field goal drive. This is where it started to feel a bit uncomfortable, 22-19. West Virginia doesn't get an offensive first down on their next series, but thank God. This was, at this point in time, the 6th sack for West Virginia on this day is when Devin Grant got him. West Virginia gets the ball back, goes on really a long drive, wearing a lot of clock off, and Curtis Jones coming through with his second of 2 touchdowns on the day and his first game as a Mountaineer running back. So this is where I kind of want to conclude my thought on Curtis Jones Jr. I just think and this is what I talked about 2 weeks ago And I think West Virginia can do this. That I think that you can afford to have more two-way players. I think in this day and age of college football, I mean, in the similar way that small market teams in Major League Baseball try to use position players with position versatility, I hear that phrase all the freaking time with the Pittsburgh Pirates following them, is I think that can finally come to college football. And it doesn't have to be, again, if you have a star player like Jaheim White or Cam Vaughn at wide receiver, you don't necessarily need to play those guys both ways. But can you have a handful of guys who might be rotational linebacker players like a Curtis Jones is, who can also play running back? I don't know why that's just such a foreign concept, or we're not even going to consider that fact. Personally, I think Curtis Jones should come into next year and be a part of the stable of running backs. Why do you need to go out there and get a kind of Ty Edwards kind of player? Because I know looking at across the board, there will be holes. I mean, now I want to kind of put a pin in that about Curtis Jones is kind of the bigger picture issue of watching this game is, man, this makes me, again, as we're talking about roster management for next season, is there's so much, again, on the defensive side of the ball that West Virginia is going to lose to graduation. That West Virginia, this past offseason, invested so heavily into its defense in total volume, and they filled it with a bunch of one-year guys, which is great. Michael Coates, I feel like, has definitely been a hit. You've needed him. Jason Chambers, not his best game in a Mountaineer uniform, but been a very serviceable cornerback number 2, I feel like, at this point. Darian Lewis, the same. Fred Perry's probably been right up there with Chase Wilson as your best defensive ads all season, but both of those guys are going to be seniors. Same Reed Carrico, Eddie Vesterinen gone. There's just so much on the West Virginia defense that's been invested for this 2025 that now with them, again, as you look to 2026, that I don't think West Virginia is going to be afforded the ability to go out there and invest so heavily in, like, okay, yeah, we're going to go get a, top flight quarterback out there. We're going to go get another, like, stud wide receiver number 2, to pair alongside Cam Vaughn. We're going to go out there and we're going to get another giant offensive running back in the same kind of vein as like a Ty Edwards or a CJ Donaldson. Like, this is where I think that you can make this work next year, where you can kind of find guys to plug in who are very like just how you did this past offseason, some quality guys on the offensive side of the ball at the skill positions that aren't necessarily like, break the bank kinds of guys. But I think you need to go out there and you need to get, again, 5 guys in the secondary. You're going to need it at all 3 safety positions. I don't trust Zay Jennings or Caleb Gray right now at any of these different safety positions. At corner, I like Nick Taylor, but I mean, he's been pretty quiet these last few games. I think he might be dealing with some sort of an injury that we don't necessarily know about. But he got crushed on that play on the onside kick that Colorado had. But there's just going to be a lot of holes to fill. I mean, I like Ben Cutter. I like what Ashton Woods, whenever he comes back from his shoulder surgery, but are those guys that you're going to like trust to lead your linebacking rotations? And I like Ben Bogle too, but in the same way that Chase Wilson and Reed Carrico have. And then you got to, you'll have some rotational guys on the defensive line. Again, these are next year's problems, but I'm just saying for right now, they're exposing the reality for next year by what you're seeing on the field is like your defense has to be able to carry you. Football is a defensive game. If you can travel, we saw this like when West Virginia's defense just really laid over and didn't play well against Kansas, against Utah, played okay against BYU, but then got crushed again after a bye week against UCF. You have to have a top flight defense. So to go out there and add studs on the defensive side of the ball, you're not going to be able to make the kind of offensive investment in the skill positions that we as fans think you can. I mean, I'm already starting to kind of play with the roster outlook, and I want to talk about that in 2 weeks because I guess that's when, in between the Arizona State and Texas Tech game, that West Virginia as a coaching staff is going to make a whole bunch of different bring all of their evaluations to the table and kind of mold. All right, who do we feel comfortable with moving on for next season? And I'm sure they're going to bring General Manager Chuck Lilly in and say, hey, like, all right, how much is player X going to cost, player Y, what are we looking at? What are we looking at with our high school recruiting? Where I will say that I think West Virginia has to invest on the offensive side of the ball, and we all know this, is the offensive line. You can't you can't go into next season with the kind of offensive line of the similar caliber as this year. I'm really glad that Tykees Crawford has stepped up, that Kimo Makaneole has gotten better. Nick, the returners from last year's teams, and like really filling into their roles in Landon Livingston and Nick Cray. That's awesome. But you can't put yourself so far behind the 8 ball starting out into a season. And I think like spring practice is going to help over the summer, this and that. But West Virginia is going to have to at least fill 2 starting positions. With guys who haven't got much experience this year. It didn't seem much Malik Agbo for the last couple of weeks. I know he was on the availability report and I think was declared out for last game. Don't know if he was going to come or not healthy enough to come back for this game, or they just wanted to go with Tykees Crawford. But that's where I think West Virginia can make a sizable investment, and I think that's where you're kind of hearing some of these rumors and some of these different reports. I know that were dropped this past week by the guys over at On3, that like maybe Kevin Brown, again, this stud 4- or 5-star recruit that was previously committed to Penn State, and then maybe they can make another splash either in high school recruiting or in transfer portal recruiting. But I just love the way that West Virginia closed. I'm glad that it was Curtis Jones who was, I still think Dior Hubbard was just so important to get so much yardage between the 20s. For Jones to come in there and play pivotal roles in the short yardage and cashing them in for touchdowns, so happy for him, so happy for the season that he's put together. And again, Scotty Fox playing above his maturity at being a true freshman. I do hope that next week we see a little bit more passing, but talking about the Arizona State defense, a whole different ballgame than I feel like the Colorado defense. But I'd love to know your thoughts, Mountaineer Nation. I'll kind of pause there. I know I'm a little over a half hour into it. What did you think? Where was there good? Where was there bad? Would you like to see improvement, or maybe West Virginia is ahead of schedule in some areas? I think where I would say is the gelling of phase 1 is pretty secure. I think now that, again, you're not changing freaking quarterbacks every single possession, you're feeling comfortable with who you have. I know running backs don't make as much of a difference, but Dior Hubbard kind of settling in as the feature back, using Sincere Bowers in the secondary role and kind of other guys replacing him. But it seems like some guys kind of settling in on both sides of the ball. I think they're just, again, they're the players at their positions all kind of gelling. We're seeing the first phase of the Rich Rodriguez offense be implemented in, and we're seeing that to better success than we saw through the first stretch of Big 12 play. I think that's why we're seeing better offense, to tell you the truth. And I do. I will want to see now more into phase 2 if Scotty Fox plays healthy, and I think you're going to need to do it if you want to beat Arizona State and Texas Tech over these next couple of weeks. So from that respect, I'm very intrigued. Again, I've said I don't think there is an unwinnable game, including this game, and even going back to Houston. I don't think that there's an unwinnable game left on the schedule because, again, Arizona State's Sam Leavitt is injured. Don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Tyson. Really just intrigued by what West Virginia maybe can just do. West Virginia against the world into that kind of road trip away from home. And then if Texas Tech is sitting pretty into a position of getting to the Big 12 championship game, do they potentially rest their starters? We'll just have to see where it goes from there. So that's why I say there's still some variables left to this season that we might be talking about a West Virginia team that could get to a bowl game. I don't know. still a lot on the table to be had. I just kind of want to take it. Just want to appreciate this win. I want to appreciate these back-to-back wins. It's nice having talking about a West Virginia winning team. It makes, like, those weekends satisfying when you walk back into work on Monday and it's like, whew, West Virginia won. You feel good about how your weekend went. So love to know your thoughts. If you've liked this video, please like it so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. It helps the algorithm. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. I'm excited to tell y'all I will be doing this upcoming week's show from Sedona, Arizona. Traveling out Tuesday afternoon with my family. Going to spend a few days out in Arizona. Love it. My brother is an Arizona State grad, and we will be in this game in attendance. So I'm hoping that I can do it. I will definitely do the preview show. The post-game show, gonna be tough to kind of record something, because then that's when we have to travel back, and that just makes for a long travel day. But I'm also gonna take some videos from my experience at Mountain American Stadium, Sun Devil Stadium. So look for that on my YouTube channel as well, just to kind of compare. I always like the college football game day experience, and haven't been to too many away stadiums in my day. I've been to Maryland, I've been to Pitt. So getting to go this far away from home for a West Virginia game, I'm super excited, taking my little girl and the rest of my family. So really excited for that one, and I'll have more coverage of it for you here throughout the week. So hail West Virginia, let's go. Love talking about a West Virginia victory on a victory Sunday, and spot that ball, baby.